Please. Okay, gewaltig. So what we learned the last couple of days was the rules of Tum and Tahira. And we learned that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught us that Sheni L'Tumah is the end of the line for Chulin. And we learned that through a Kal V'chomer, there's Shlishi for Truma, and through another Kal V'chomer, there's Revi for Kodesh. Rabbi Kiva brought a pasuk in our Mishnah that says that even Chulin has Shlishi, which we don't paskin like. Rather, we paskin that Chulin stops at Sheni, and we have a Kal V'chomer to include Truma for a Shlishi. The Kal V'chomer was from Tful Yom. Tful Yom is someone who was Tameh, and he went through the whole Torah process, and then he went to the mikveh, and between the time that he went to the mikveh and the evening time, sunset, he's called a Tful Yom. The halacha is that Tful Yom is allowed to eat and touch Ma'aser Sheni, but a Tful Yom is not allowed to touch Truma, and if he touched Truma, he will pass all the Truma. So the Gemara makes a Kal V'chomer. Madich Tful Yom, which is very kill. Why? Because a Tful Yom is even allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni. Nevertheless, if a Tful Yom touches Truma, he passes it. So Sheni L'Tumah, which is Tameh, and therefore it passes Ma'aser Sheni, surely it should be able to passel Truma by making it into a Tumah Shlishi. That's the Makar, that Truma has a Tumah Shlishi. Now, if you would learn like Rabbi Kiva, then you would actually be able to bring a raya that Truma even has a Tumah Revi from the same Kal V'chomer. And that would be Madich at Tful Yom, which will not passel Ma'aser Sheni. He can eat, he can touch Ma'aser Sheni. Nevertheless, this Tful Yom, if he touches Truma, it will be Tameh, and it will passel it. A Shlishi L'Tumah, which by Ma'aser Sheni it would passel, because it's Tameh by Chulin, according to Rabbi Kiva, surely it will be able to passel a Revi and make a Revi by Truma. Since we don't passel like Rabbi Kiva, and we hold by Chulin, Sheni is the end of the line, this Kal V'chomer will only be used to tell us that by Truma there's a Shlishi. By Kodesh, we know there's a Shlishi because there's a pasuk the Gemara brings. How do we know by Kodesh there's a Revi? So the Gemara brings another Kal V'chomer. And this time, it's a Kal V'chomer from Mechusar Kapara. He's already Hurav Shemesh the evening after he went to the mikveh. Now all he has to do is wait till tomorrow to bring his karbanos. So Mechusar Kapurim, the Gemara says, Madech Mechusar Kapurim. If he touches Truma, it's no problem. A Mechusar Kapurim can even eat Truma, so it's very kill. Nevertheless, if a Mechusar Kapurim touches Kachim, he passes the Kachim. The Truma, that Tameh Shlishi, should surely be able to make a Revi B'Kodesh. So that's how we know that we have Revi B'Kodesh. We also know that if you would hold, like Rabbi Kiva, you would use the same Kal V'chomer to make a Chamishi L'Kodesh. And that is the basic Tamtis of our Gemara. The other thing we learned all the way at the end of the day on Friday was about this fellow who had an Isa that was Tameh, and he still has to be Mafresh Chala. The problem is you have to be Mafresh Chala from the actual Isa, and you can't be Mafresh Chala if it's Tameh. So how are you going to do this? So he suggested you take this Isa, which is a Rishon L'Tumah, and you take a piece of dough that's also Tevel, but it's Tahar, and you put it near the big dough of Tumah. And you want to be Mafresh Truma. But the problem is you don't want to touch, because then it'll become Tameh, and then you can't make it into Challah. But the problem is, unless it's connected to the main dough, you cannot be Mafresh Challah from one piece of dough on another piece of dough unless they're all touching. So Meir said, take a third piece of dough that's Tahar, a small piece, put it in between the big Tameh dough and this small piece of dough that you want to separate for Challah. It'll touch both sides. That connects it enough that you could now be mafresh the piece of Tahar dough as Truma, as Challah. But it will not become Tameh. Why? Because the big dough is Rishon. It makes the little dough into a Sheni. And Chulin, Sheni is the end of the line. So therefore, the sheni will not be able to make that piece of challah into a tumah because it's a shlishi, and a shlishi does not exist by chulin. The only caveat we have is we have to say that when something is tevel, it's not considered like this truma and chulin mixed together, because then there's the truma portion would be able to become a shlishi l'tumah. Rather, we say tevel is its own thing. It's tvur that wasn't masukin, it's dough that wasn't masukin, but it doesn't have any truma in it, and therefore, unless it's a sheni, will not be able to make a tomei because a chulin cannot become a shlishi. We also have to hold that you're allowed to be mitama that little piece, because that little piece in between your challah and the tomei dough is becoming tomei. And there's a shita who holds that you're not allowed to make even chulin. You're not allowed to make a tomei in Eretz Yisrael. And this story happened in Eretz Yisrael. So you have to hold that it's mutter ligroim tuma lechulin shebechutz laaretz. Because if you wouldn't be able to, then this eitzah wouldn't work. And in fact, the chachamim hold this eitzah does not work. Okay, beautiful. And that takes us to the middle of Daf Lamed Amud Beis at the two dots, when the Gemara is going to now elaborate on the series of halachas that were taught boy b'yoyim on that very special day where Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became the Nasi, and they opened up the Bismedrash to anybody, even if someone was not Toichik Kabarai, and in fact the ranks of the yeshiva swelled, and there are so many more Talmidei Chachamim which prompted the learning of many more halachas. So we're about halfway down, a little bit less than halfway down on Daf Lamed Amud Beis. Boy b'yoyim dorish Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva Darshan that day, the Mishnah brings down two shitas as to what was the area surrounding the Arei HaLeviim, what was the area surrounding the cities that the Levim lived in. So for a radius of 1,000 amos all the way around the city was parkland, open parkland to beautify the city. The question is, the second set of 1,000 amos, what was that? One mandomer learned that that's Tchum Shabbos. So in fact, you have psukim that are telling you that Tchum Shabbos is 2,000 amos. The other mandomer said, no, the pasuk is not referring to Tchum Shabbos at all. The 2,000 amos that the pasuk is referring to besides the 1,000 amma radius of parkland, the second 1,000 amma radius would be vineyards and fields. So Zok to Gemara, what's the difference between these two mandamer? It's pretty simple. The mandamer who learns the pasuk to teach you that the 2,000 amma radius around the Orei Levim was Tchum Shabbos. Clearly, you see from there that Tchum Shabbos is deraisa. But the mandamer will hold that Tchum and the whole prohibition of going out of the Tchum is only midirabanan, so you cannot say that it's referred to in the pasuk because it's only midirabanan. Hadarabanan. Boy b'yoyim, that day, Darish Rabbi Akiva Darshan. The Shah Sha'olu Yisrael min hayam. When Klal Yisrael came out of the Yam, Nosnu Eineim, they gave their eyes Leimer Shira. Nosnu Eineim is an interesting expression. We might have clarity into why the Gemara used this expression a little bit later. I know it's spoken about in the Mefarshim, but I don't specifically remember what they say. But the Gemara later seems to clarify why it's Nosnu Eineim. Nosnu Eineim Leimer Shira. The Ketan Amru Shira. How did the Shira go? Zok the Heilige Gemara, Rabbi Akiva says, Ki Gadol HaMakra es Halal. If a Gadol is saying Halal on behalf of a Tzibur, so there's Shemea Ka'ina. That means the Tzibur does not have to say Halal, they could listen to the Gadol saying, the Hein Ayin Acher of Rosh Hashanah. And Klal Yisrael only answered the Rosh Hashanah. And this is how it went. Moshe Amar Ashir Lashem, the Hein Ayin, and Klal Yisrael responded, Ashir Lashem. Then Moshe said this next line, Moshe Amar Ki Gaiga, the Hein Ayin Ashir Lashem. So Ashir Lashem was like the chorus, and the Tzibur kept on repeating the chorus after Moshe Rabbeinu said each stanza. They didn't say each stanza because they were Yotze like a Gadol is Moitzi, a Tzibur. Rabbi Elazar ben Noish, Rabbi Yosef Lili Aimer, they actually did say every word themselves because it's Kikatan Hamakre Esal. Imagine if there's a katan that's reading Halal so that everybody can repeat after him. So the katan cannot be moitzi everybody with the Halal, but he surely can read the words and everybody can repeat after him. Moshe Amar, Shmuel Ervin told us a story with Rabbi Price that he was officiating at a chasana, and the chassan couldn't read Hebrew, but he didn't know much about Yiddishkeit at all. So when it came to the Kedushin, he gave the chassan the ring, and he told the chassan, okay, put the ring on their finger and then say, Harei at, repeat after me, Harei at. So the chassan says, hurry up, because he didn't hear the word Harei at, he thought he was saying hurry up. So that's like the cotton who's Aina Achara. Okay? So how did it sound like? Moshe said, Ashir Lashem, Vehem Amar Ashir Hashem. Moshe Amar Ki Goyga, Vein Aram Ki Goyga. So they were literally repeating after Moshe Rabbeinu. From Nehemiah Omer, it was a third variation. It's Kesofer HaParis Al Shema B'Veis HaKnesses. It's like when a Rebbe is teaching the children in shul how to daven, he just starts up the paragraph and then all the children together say it together. Jehu B'Sayach Chila. The Rebbe first starts with the first couple of words, and they all say it together. But my komiflagi, we have a three-way machlokes as to how the shira was said. They must be arguing how to understand the psukim. So what is the machlokes? It says Vayomer Leimor Ashur Lashem Ki Gaiga. What is Vayomer Leimor? Leimor means a milsa kamaisa. They kept on saying over the first word, Ashir Lashem. Lemar means Akol Milso Milso. Lemar means that the Klal Yisrael was going to repeat after Moshe every stanza. Rabbi Nechemi Savar, Vayomru means the Omar Kulu B'Hada Adadi, everybody said the shir together. Lemar meaning the Pasach Moshe Bereisha, Moshe started it first. I think we should need to point out, if they were repeating it after Moshe, so Moshe was saying the shira with Ruach HaKodesh, and they were repeating after him. If they were all saying it together, it must be that they all had Ruach HaKodesh to all say the same shira. I doubt it was like the grand sing in camp where they give out papers to the theme song for the different teams to sing it. They probably spontaneously all said it together. Tanu Rabbanan. The Rabbanan taught us. Darish Rabbi Yosy agreed. B'shah she'alu Yisrael min hayam. When Klal Yisrael came out of the Yam, Nosnu Eineim Loimer Shira. They put their eyes to say Shira. The Kate said Amru Shira. How did it look? Oilel, a young child, Mutal al Birkei Imo, sitting on his mother's lap, or Vitinik Yoinik Mishtei Imo, even a younger baby who was still nursing. He even Shiros a Shchina. The moment they saw the Shchina, Oilel Hilgbiat Savor, the youth lifted up his head. V'tinuk shoma dodnipiv, the baby, like a baby getting distracted while it's nursing, it just turns its head and lets go of the nursing. V'amru, and they all said, Zeh Kelev Anvei. How do you know that even the children were saying it? Shneimar, it says in the pasuk, Mipi Oilim V'Yoinkim, even from the little children, Yosada Ta'ois, there was the foundation for the strength of saying Shira. How did they know this was the Rebbeinu Shalom? So the Mefarshim tell us that when all the children were born in Mitzrayim, Tachas Tapuach, they were taken down under the ground, like we learned, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu B'chvoidu V'atzmai and the Malachim were taking care of these children. So they were living with the Shekhinah. So when they got to the Krias Yamsuf and they saw the Shekhinah, said, "Oh, that's who was playing with us. That's the Rebbeinu who played with us and raised us in our nursery." So they right away recognized the Rebbeinu. How do we know? How do we know that even babies that weren't born yet were saying Shira? It says with a big group, and we're going to turn over onto the Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph, which is today's daf. We're actually going to finish an entire parak today. I believe it's going to be. This is the smallest parak in Shas. It says b'makelos baruchu elakim Hashem mimekar Yisrael. They were saying Shira mimekar Yisrael. Makar means even from inside their mother. Frankly, more if they're inside their mother, so then how can they possibly see the Shekhinah? V'aloi chazu Rab Tanchum keres nasa lehen kas paklaria hameira. Their mother's stomach became like clear glass. They were able to see out. They were actually able to see out of their mothers, and they were able to say Shira. Shmuel showed me one of the Daf Yomi papers that get sent around. There was we learned recently. There's three things that have to be nira. And one of the three things we learned about was the roik, the spinning of the yavama. The other two was the afer paraduma in the water, and then there was the afer of the Sotah in the water. And then there was a second sheet as well, even the dam of the bird into the water by the tzaras. But I'll call upon him. Everybody agrees that the spit has to be seen clearly by whoever is making the chalitza, taking care of the chalitza. So there was a shaila where there was a bezdin that was setting up the chalitza, that was officiating the chalitza, and there was a young whippersnapper rabbi who said, "I don't know if this old dayan is going to be good because he wears glasses and he's not directly looking at the saliva, and therefore it's not a good chalitza." So they told him, "What are you talking about? We have over here a Gemara that says children they saw through the glass, and that was good enough to be called seeing. So seeing through glasses surely is good enough to be called seeing." On that very special day, Darish Rabbi Yeshua ben Hyrcanus, that Eiv did avoid the me'aba, the shaila was me'aba or me'ira, because it says, "Hein yikteleni," even if I die, loy ayachem. And the shaila was, is it loy with a vav, to him I will still look, which would indicate that Eiv was oived me'aba, or is it loy ayachem with an aleph, I will no longer look towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which would indicate that Eiv only was oived or Rabbanu Shalom me'ira. The Zok to Gemara, if that's the question, if the loy ayachem is written with a vav or an aleph, why don't we check? V'lechse hay loy, Ibelamed Aleph Ksiv, then it's loy, no. Ibelamed Vav Ksiv, and then loy, it means yes. Loy. Zok to Gemara, I don't know if checking would help. Why? V'chalhecha d'ksiv v'lamed Aleph loyu. Are you telling me that when a word is spelled with a lamed Aleph, it means not? I'm going to bring you a raya from a pasuk in Yeshaya that even though it has an Aleph, it could mean yes. In all of our tzaris, loy tzar, Hashem is with us. It doesn't mean Hashem is not with us. It means Hashem is with us. And it says it there, B'lamed Aleph, B'lamed Aleph. Hachanami deloyu, could you possibly say that it means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not with us in our Shas Tzara? V'chitema hachanami, and if you can suggest that that's pshat, it can't be, because the very next words in the pasuk say, V'chsivu malach panav Hashem, right away Hashem sends the malachim to rescue us. So clearly Hashem is with us. So you see, loy could mean, loy with an aleph could also mean yes. Elo mashmahach li mashmahach. Rather, loy with an aleph could mean to him. It could also mean not. Gewaltig. So let's stop a second, because what pasuk did the Gemara pick to prove that even loy with an aleph could mean to him? Pasuk in Yeshaya. What's interesting is there's actually two psukim in Chumash that spell loy with an aleph, and the kri is with a vav. One is asher loy chayma, when it's talking about a city with a wall, when it's talking about the Botei Orechema, and the other one is when it's talking about which grasshoppers you're allowed to eat. It says Asher Lo Kra'ayim, the grasshoppers that have a certain knee, a certain joint. And in both those cases, although the ksiv is with an aleph, we read it with a vav. I don't know the answer, but it's an interesting point. Zog ti Gemara weiter. Zog ti Gemara weiter. Tanya Rabbi Meir, Nemar Yirei Elokim Be'iyah. The Novi refers to Eiv as Yirei Elokim. V'nemar Yirei Elokim ba'Avram. It says Yirei Elokim by Avram Avinu. This is at the end of the Akedah. It says about Avram Avinu that he was a Yirei Elokim. So Zok to Gemara, let's compare the two. Ma Yirei Elokim Amar ba'Avram Me'ahava. Just like Avram's Yira was Me'ahava, Av Yirei Elokim Amar ba'Eiv is Me'ahava. That also means from Ahava. But Avram, it says Ki Yirei Elokim Ata at the end of the Akedah, and we know it's Me'ahava. How do you know the Yirei Elokim of Avram means Me'ahava? Avram Gufei Minolon, how do you know it's Me'ahava? D'chsiv Zera Avram Me'ahava. So you see clearly Avram has Ahava. Now, Rashi tells us that the Ahava and the Yira that we're discussing here is not anything like we had about the 7 Prushim, and 2 of the Prushim was Parish Me'ahava, which was Taichas for the want to get schar, and Parish Me'ira someone who's a parish because he's afraid to get einshim. That's not what this is, Rashi. That's shaloi lishma mitoch shaloi lishma bolishma. This means ahavas haroimimus and yiras haroimimus. We're talking here about a much higher madrega than what the Gemara discussed a couple of blot ago. Zog the Gemara, so my ika bein oisem ehava lo oisem yira. What is the actual difference in schar? What's the difference in schar between oisem ehava to oisem yira? Zog the Gemara, ika hadatanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer gadol la oisem ehava yosem min oisem yira. One who does avodas Hashem from ahava is greater than his schar is greater than oisem yira. Shezeh totally l'elaf dor. The schar of someone who does avodah meira, the schar protects him for $1,000. V'zeh totally l'alpayim dor. But if you do avodah Hashem ahava, then the schus protects him and his family for $2,000. Hachaksev la'alofim lo'ayvay l'shem mitzvayse. This is at the end of the series of Dibros. It says v'oishe chesed la'alofim lo'yhavay l'shem mitzvayse. So right near the word alafim, it's 2,000. It says lo'yhavay. So you see, ahava gets you $2,000 of protection. V'hazam siv, and referring to yira, it says u'l'shomer mitzvayse. And the lashon shomer mitzvayse, Rashi tells us, as a connotation of yira. He's watching the mitzvahs. Le'elaf dar, only for $1,000. Frank the Gemara, if you look at the word right before u'l'shomer, it says lo'yhavav. Hazam namiksiv lo'yhavav u'l'shomer mitzvayse le'elaf dar. So wouldn't that tell us that even ahava is elaf dar? Dr. Gemara, no. Highly the samachle, highly the samachle. The words closer to elaf are l'shomer mitzvayse. La'paim is la'elaf is before that. But by the la'alafim la'hayvai, the word la'alafim is directly before the word la'havai. So therefore, we say that Oived me'ava, there's $2,000 of protection. Hanu trei talmidei davi Yosy kamei the Rav. Rav two talmidim. Chad Omerle. One told his Rebbe, I had a dream last night. Akayim b'chalmoi, in my dream, they read me the following passage. Ma'rev tovcha asher tzafanta lirei echa. What is the greatness that's put away and being saved for those who fear Hashem? The other Talmud said, Akayim b'chalmoi v'yismechu kol choyse bach la'olam yiranenu. Who's going to celebrate with Rebbeinu Shalom? The Ahave Shemech. Amalu, so Rava told us Talmidim, Tarvaychu Rabbanon Tzadiki Gemuratan. You're both Tzadikim Gemurim. Marma Yahava, one of my Talmidim is a Chassidische, so he's Ovid Hashem Yahava, Umar Meir. And the other one's a Litvak, so he's only Ovid Meir. Baruch Hashem, we were zocheh to finish the 5th parak of Sotah today. Hashem Shamayim, B'li Neder, Hadin Aloch Kashem Shamayim, Hadin Aloch Kashem Shamayim, Hadin Aloch Kashem Shamayim. Now we're going to learn a full new parak. Mi Shekine le'ishtoi v'nistor. Someone who was Makana, his wife. So let's think about it. Where were we holding? If I'm not mistaken, the last thing we learned about is the woman after she drank from the Sotah, now her body blows up. So is Mishakina in order? Mishakina is rewinding way back to the beginning. What is this Mishnah doing here? So Tosfos discusses it, and Tosfos says Mishakina la Perik zeh hayahagun sheishanu umuur v'perik rishon. This really belongs in the first parak la'acher oisa bava, after the case in the Mishnah of the elu asuris lechel b'truma, and the agaga chayil l'shna is case at oisala. Then it should discuss what they do with the Sotah. We've already learned in the Mishnah where the Mayim is Boideker, somehow the Gemara is going all the way back to Kinui. So Tosfos doesn't answer the kasha, but he asks it. So Mishakina le'ishtoi v'nistra. Someone made Kinui, and since she was Nistra, and the Nistra, according to Rabbi Eliezer, as we learned in the very first Mishnah, is with 2 Eidim. Then I apologize. According to Belezer, the Nistra is even with an Eid Echad, I believe. I'm pretty sure that according to Belezer, you only need 1 Eid to say that she was Nistra. Afilu shama me'oiv ha'perech. In fact, Rashi says that. Afilu shama me'oiv ha'perech she'nistra. So even if you didn't have a proper Eidim, even an Oiva Pereach, you have a Pashala Eid, who's like an Oiva Pereach, and he said, I saw that she was Nistera, Yoitziv eating Ksuba. Divi Rabbi Eliezer. So of course Rashi asks, what do you mean Yoitziv eating Ksuba? She should go through the process of Sotah. So Rashi said, it's speaking where the husband didn't want to go through with it. If the husband didn't want to go through with it, then he divorces his wife, and he has to give her the Ksuba, because he's the one that's preventing her from drinking. That is the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shua, remember, Rabbi Shua said that you need 2 Eidim to say that she was Nistera, to trigger the Sotah process. Therefore, if there are 2 Eidim that she was Nistera, that's when she drinks from the Mesaita. And if not, no. But if there are 2 Eidim, no matter what, she drinks from the Mesaita, unless it's so obvious that she is Zoina. All the women are already talking about her, that she was Mizana, that's already Mias, and therefore, at that point, we will not be mash to her anymore. As Rashi says, it's Mios v'teitze, because once everyone's talking about her, the afilu maya sula botkilo, and therefore she will not drink from the Mayim Hamor. Omar Eid Echad Anira Isa Sheditmas. After there was Stira, and now she's lined up to go to the Mesaita. And one day comes along, it says, during that Stira that she had, I saw that she became Nitmas, which is how Rashi learns. Others learn that an Eid Echad came and said that she was Mizana, even if it had nothing to do with that Stira in question, she saw that she was Mizana of somebody else. But Rashi learns that Eid Echad is saying, by that Stira, when she was Saisa with Bill, I saw that they were Mizana. So if an Eid Echad comes and says that Loi Haisa Shaisa, she's not believed. Why is she not believed? Because we already said, once there's Kinoi and Stira, it's already Reglayim Ladover. So if you have even one Eid that says she's Tomei, you would believe him and she wouldn't drink. And not only that, never mind the kosher Eid Echad, Elafilu Eved, Afilu Shivcha, people are normally not kosher even to be an Eid Echad, Hare'elu Namanim, Af Lepoishla Miksubasa. You even believe them that she was Mizana to the point that she loses her ksuba. Now, the halacha is, if a woman, Rachman al-Islam, cannot find her husband, and she's in the Guna, we rely even on an Eid Echad, even a non-kosher aid, to say testimony that they saw that her husband died. But there's 5 women who we would not trust to be mater and aguna and to say that her husband died. And the reason why these 5 women aren't believed is because they have a reason to want to mess her up. They have a reason to want her to get married to somebody else, and then her husband will come back, and now she'll be usher l'boy l'ba. They want to mess her up. Who automatically has a sinner to a woman? There's 5 women who automatically hate a woman. Number 1, Chamoisa, her mother-in-law. She probably says, that lazy, good for nothing, my son married this wicked lady, I want to get rid of her. So her mother-in-law might say false testimony that her own son died so that her daughter-in-law should be Mikkel Kelis. Ubas Chamoisa, as well as the daughter of her mother-in-law, which would be her sister-in-law. And then there's Tsarasa, if she has a co-wife, surely that's competition. The Yevimta, and even her husband's brother's wife, because if her husband is to die without children, she's going to end up marrying her brother-in-law, and that's going to create competition for her sister-in-law. Ubas Baila, if she came into a marriage where her husband already had a daughter, so that's going to be her stepdaughter, she's obviously not going to like that this woman took away her father. Therefore, even though they're not nemenos, normally for Eidei, to be matter a woman to l'shuk, hare'elu nemanos, they would still be believed because it's raglayim l'dover. So if they said that she was mezana, she's usher to her husband. But you don't believe her like you believed another aid because v'loy l'paislo miksubasa ela shaloi tishta. You believe them that she can't drink anymore and she's usher l'bayla, but she does get her ksuba if she's divorced. Let's get a little bit more information about these 5 women. Chamoisu bas chamoisa v'tzarasa v'yivinta. Eishes achei bayla. So the Yevimta is her sister-in-law, Eshes Achaybayla. Afik it's a Russia. We treat her like a tzara, Visainosa, and she doesn't like her. Why? She's always worried that this woman might be my co-wife. My husband might marry this woman as a second wife. If her husband dies without children, then she's going to make him with my husband. I don't want that. That's also a woman who would not like her stepmother. And therefore, they won't be believed to say anything that's bad. That's why they cannot be mafsed or ksuba. But since it's reglaim dover, we still say that she will not drink from the Sotah if one of these women say edus that she was mizam. Okay, gewaltig. Zogt the Gemara about the Shahaya Bedin. Let's think about it. We're saying that even one aid that says that she was mizana will be believed, and she will not drink, and she will not get a ksuba. But if you think about it, we should really have a kal v'chomer that you do require two edim to say that she's tummy. Why? Uma made this rishona. Edim that came along and said this woman had stira. Even after she had stira, she's not permanently usher to her husband because she might end up getting back together if after she drinks it turns out that she's clean. She ain't israsa is her ayla. So the Eidei Stira don't answer her forever. In other words, what they accomplish, their ramification is not so severe. Yet we still need two Eidim to cause something that's not so severe. Nevertheless, Eidim Eskayemis B'Pachos Mishnayim. Eidus Achroino, the last Eidus, meaning the Eidim that are saying that she was actually Tameh, so Yisrasa is her Eidim, that permanently answer her to her husband. She gets thrown out without a ksuba. That has a much bigger impact. Surely you should need a much greater than Moses. You should need two Eidim. If Eidim that have a small impact require two, Eidim that have a huge impact, surely you should require two Eidim. Hamad Leimer, the pasuk tells us, the Eid ein ba. When can she drink from the Mei Sotah? If it's Eid ein ba, meaning called edus sheyeshba. Any type of edus that says she was tamei, even one, will say she doesn't drink from the mayim hamar. So if that's the case, now let's do the reverse kavachim. If we know a edus that has a huge impact, it's going to answer her to her baal permanently. If an eid comes along and says that she's tamei, Malach works for that. Surely an eid should work to tell us that she made stira, because that doesn't have such a big impact. That only answers her temporarily until she drinks of the mayim hama'arim. So Uma im edus, and we'll turn over onto Amud Beis. Uma im edus, achroina. Shaishra says her oilam, and has a huge impact that answers her forever. Nevertheless, Harei Miskayemis Beit Echad, Edus HaRishayna, the first Edus, that doesn't have such a severe impact. She'eino Yisrael Yisrael Olam, Eino Din, Shetiskayim Beit Echad, surely an Eid Echad should be enough. Hamad Loimer, the Torah tells us, Himatza Ba Ervas Davar. When it comes to a Davar Shabe'erva, this pasuk is not specifically referring to Sotah, it's referring to the parish of Gershon, or Ervas Davar. Whenever it comes to Davar Shabe'erva, it says Kimatza with Ervas Davar. And what does that mean? There's another pasuk by Choshen Mishpat that says Al Pishnai made him Yakum Davar. So we learn Exer Shavah from the word Davar by Choshen Mishpat to the word Davar by Ervas Davar to teach us Malalan Al Pishnai, just like by Choshen Mishpat. The Torah says specifically you need two Eidim Avkan Pishnayim. Therefore, here as well, it needs to be Pishnayim. You need to have two Eidim for a Davar Shabe'erva, and that's why you need two Eidim to say Stira. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. What happens if an Eid came along, Eid Oyminit Mas, and the Eid said she's Tamei? So we already said earlier in the Mishnah, if one Eid comes along and says that she's Tamei, you believe him, and she doesn't drink. But what happens if after that, the Eid Oymer Loinit Mas? Eid came and contradicted the first Eid and said, no, When you thought that they were mizana, you weren't there. You didn't see that. That's not true. And it's still a suffix. There's a steer, but we don't know if there's nus. Or what if Isha Imeris Nitmas, Isha Imeris Lai Nitmas? The halach is Hosha Soisha, she would still drink because the second aid neutralizes what the first aid said. What happened if Echad Oimer Nitmas or Shnaim Oimer Nitmas? Then Hosha Soisha. Now this is a very interesting case because what's the chiddush? That two eidim are believed over one aid? That's not much of a chiddush. So the Gemara is going to say it must be that this halacha is taken not a chiddush, but if we're medayik from this halacha, we'll extract the chiddush. But we'll get to there later. And the same thing with the next line. Again, because you believe the Shnayim who said Nitmas against the Echad who said Nitmas, and therefore she does not drink. Frank the Gemara, I don't understand. You brought a pasuk to prove that for stira you need two edim to say that this woman was nistira. She secluded herself with this man, and you learn it from Kimotza ba'ervas davar. Frank the Gemara, Hi Talmud Leimar Kimotza ba'ervas davar. Why do I need to zichais a pasuk that talks about generic ervas davar if the pasuk, but a parsha of Sotah itself makes it quite clear that you need two edim for the stira? Why? Because Talmud Leimar ba, it is the eid ein ba legabi the eid tuma that we learned in the Mishnah of eid ein ba, that even if there's one eid that says that she's tamei, she won't drink. But ba is a miyut. Dafka for eidus of tuma. This chiddush that the Torah says ba and eid echad was neman by tuma, it specifically applies only to eid tuma, not to eid kinui and not eid stira. That's what the Mishnah should have said is the reason why by eid stira you need two edim, and it shouldn't have brought the generic pasuk of kimatza ba'ervas davar. Zok the Gemara, you're right. Hachanami kamar. That's really what the Mishnah means to say. Talmud Leimar ba b'lei b'kinu ba b'lei b'stira. What did the Gemara? Why did the Mishnah bring the pasuk of kimatza ba'ervas davar? That's to address another case. The tuma ba'alma b'lei kinu b'lei stira. What if there was no kinu in stira, but you have an aid that comes along and says, I saw that this woman was mizada. So an eid echad does not believe. The loy mehem an eid echad. We know, and how do we know that an eid echad does not believe to say testimony that this woman was mizana? Because nemer kan davar kimota b'ervas davar, v'nemer lahalon davar b'al b'shnai edim yakum davar, mal alon b'shnei edim af kan b'shnei edim. You need to edim for a davar shebe'ervo. So if someone wants to come along and say a woman was mizana, you need to edim. Okay, let's get on to the next case. Eid omer nitmas, and the second eid said loy nitmas. The Mishnah says Shoisa, she drinks because the second aid neutralizes what the first aid said. Correct the Gemara. Time of the kamakrisli. You're telling me that the only reason why she is Shoisa is because the second aid neutralized what the first aid said. Haloi kamakrisli. Let's say there wouldn't have been a second aid. There was only one aid who came along and said nitmas. Eid echad mehemet. One aid would be believed that she was nitmas, right? That's what we've been learning in the Quran. Midanamili. How do you know that an eid echad is believed to say nitmas? We're going to have a little bit of a chazara. The Tanur Rabbanan, the eid b'shnayim ha'kosav medaber. Atam b'shnayim, does it mean there's no two eid, but there's only one eid? Maybe there's not even one eid. It says la yakum eid echad b'ish. Now eid is singular form. So if it's speaking about one eid, it should say la yakum eid b'ish. Why do you say eid echad? Every eid by definition is an eid echad. It doesn't say eidim, it says eid. I know we're talking about one. So ma tamad loimer echad. Why did the Torah stick in that extra word echad? Rather, to teach us a lesson b'chol Torah kudah. Zebana av hol mokim shenemer eid. Anywhere in the Torah where the Torah used the word eid, it doesn't mean one eid. Rather, it means two eidim. Harek and shnayim. How do you know? You know it from al pishnayim from lo yokum eid echad beish. Until the pasuk speaks out eid echad like it does in the pasuk of layokum eid echad beish. Otherwise, the assumption is that eid means two eid. V'yomer Rachmana, and the pasuk says by Sotah, ve'eid ein ba trei lespa. There's no two eidim to say that she was nitmas. Elachad. There's only one aid saying that she's nitmas, and v'lo nitpasa, and she wasn't enas. Asura, she becomes asur. So you see that one aid is believed to say that she's nitmas. Correct the Gemara. So now we've established that midaraisa and the eid echad is neman to say she nitmas. The kivan the midaraisa eid echad mehemen. If midaraisa and eid echad is mehemen to say she's nitmas, well then after Bezdin accepts the edus of the aid that's saying that she was nitmas, how could the second aid that contradict the first aid neutralize the first aid? How can the second aid neutralize the testimony of the first aid? Ula said, whenever the Torah tells us that echad is believed, that means we treat the single aid as if two aidim came and said something, and that's 100% namanas. And therefore, if another aid wants to come later, an aid echad, to be makrish the words of the first aid that have already been crystallized as two aidim, the aidus of the second aid is useless. You know why? Because the first aid's testimony has already taken on the character of an aidus from two aidim. So I was like the Gemara, watch Pshat in our Mishnah. If the first aid said it's mace, and that becomes crystallized as if there's two aidim, how could the second aid come and neutralize that? Now there's a shaila at what point the testimony of the first aidim become crystallized as two aidim. Rashi says, within a couple of seconds after they say their testimony, it's crystallized as two aidim. Tosfos says we have to paskin already based on them and accept them, and that's when it becomes crystallized. But whatever that point of time is, once it becomes crystallized, how could a second aid echad come and neutralize the testimony of the first aid that has already taken the strength of two aid? We're going to have to say, in fact, that the second set of aid was not believed. So if the first aid said nitmas, she doesn't drink. Even if the second aid comes later and says loy nitmas, she still doesn't drink. Hani loy haisa shoysa. So Ula is actually changing the words of our Mishnah. When we read our Mishnah, it said shoysa, and Ula is saying that you say loy haisa shoysa. And that's how Rabbi Yitzchak read our Mishnah, that loy haisa shoysa. But for Rabbi Chiya says, no, let's stick to the word of the Mishnah. Let's not change the word of the Mishnah. And let's say shoysa, she still drinks. Haisa shoysa. The problem is, how does Rabbi Chiya explain that? Rabbi Chiya kasha the Ula. Don't we have Ula's kasha? How could you say she drinks? Because the second testimony neutralizes the first testimony. The first testimony already has the koyach of tu'edim. Zok to Gemara, very simply. Loy kasha, kan bevasachas, kan bezachas. You're right. If Adam came one after the other, by the time the first aid said his testimony, it was crystallized. Now it has a strength of tu'edim. But our Mishnah says shaisa, because you believe the second aid to neutralize what the first aid said, is speaking when they came at the same time. If they come at the same time, then the first aid never got crystallized, and therefore it remains a suffix. And if it's a suffix, she could still drink from the mayim hamorim. Gewaltig. Now the Gemara tries to challenge Reb Chiya from our very Mishnah, the last part of our Mishnah. And now we learned eid omer nitmas, one eid said nitmas, u'shnayim omer loy nitmas. The halacha says a shoysa. So right off the bat, as we mentioned in the Mishnah, there's no chiddush in this. It must be that the Tana is telling us to make a diak from it. And what is the diak? Dafke, when do you believe two eidim? After the eid echad came, that's only if there are two eidim. But if they're both one aid, and of course we know that we're speaking b'vasakas, because that's how Reb Chiya learns. If two individual eidim came together, one said she was nitmas and one not nitmas, then she wouldn't drink, because if the Mishnah says she only drinks when two eidim said nitmas, The deek would be that if only one ate nitmas, she wouldn't drink. Well, that's exactly what Ula said, and that's contradictory to Reb Chisda, to Reb Chia. This seems to prove that Reb Chia is wrong. Reb Chia, are you kidding me? I'm not wrong. Look at the next case in the Mishnah, where we have the opposite result. If two items said she was nitmas, and the one that said lo nitmas, she wouldn't drink. But if it was one and one, she would drink. Why would she drink? So you have a raya like me that it was b'vasakas would drink. So what you have to say is that this Mishnah, these two cases, cannot be something that you should be medayik from them. If it's two edim nazar, then by one edim it would be different. No, these last two cases of the Mishnah, to talk about two edim and one edim, has nothing whatsoever to do with the Mishnah earlier. It's a whole new idea. And what is it? It's the idea of Rab Nechemya. Elakula b'psula edus. It's the chiddush of these last two cases are munei ubei, not from a diak that we make from them. Rather, they in and of themselves at face value are a chiddush because they're speaking of psula edus. The one edim and the two edim are not regular men. They're women. They're avodim. They're all psula edus. And Rab Nechemya taught us a rule how you treat psula edus in a place where the Torah accepts their edus, such as Sotah. Rab Nechemya, the Tanya Rab Nechemya, Omer, if the Torah believes in Eid Echad like it does in Sotah, then halach acharoiv deyos. You always go basaroiv. And a woman now has the same strength, the testimony of a woman has the same strength as a regular kosher Eid. Now everybody is the same, and you go basaroiv, you go basar most of the testimony. And that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, where it says, when there's two Eidim saying one way and one said the other way, no matter if some of the Eidim are kosher, no matter if some of the Eidim are possible, it doesn't matter. They all carry the same amount of weight. And that is the chiddush of the end of the Mishnah. That's one pshat in Rab Nechemya. But there was another pshat in Rab Nechemya. V'ikad Amri, koleicha da'aseh echad kosher meikara, afilu me'enoshim nami kerechadam. There's another shita that holds that no, if the first Eid that came was an Eid echad kosher, a male, and he was a kosher Eid, well then he has stronger weight than two women. The first round we said two women will overrule one man. But now we're saying no. Two women will only equalize and neutralize one man. They won't overrule it. Therefore, afilu mei noshim nami kein echadamin, and it's equal, which means it remains a suffix. The hacha, now we'll turn on to Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. The Hacha Mayaskinon going to Asoi Isha Meikara. The Eiracha that came was a woman. Ushnaim Omer. I'm sorry, Tirtel Rab Nechemya Hachi. This is how Rab Nechemya will learn our Mishnah. You follow the roiv deis. However, it's not completely like that because it's for also shtei noshim be'isha achas kishnei anoshim be'ishecha. If they're all psulim, you go basaroiv just like if they're all ksheir. But if you have psulim and ksheir, avol shtei noshim be'ishecha, that you don't go basaroiv. There it'll be kapalga upalga dami. Let's see Rashi. The katani eirechad oimer nitmas, u'shnayim oimer lo nitmas, haisha shoyse. In the case of the Mishnah, where if one had said nitmas and two edim said lo nitmas, we say that we believe the two edim, and therefore she still remains a suffix, and therefore she still has to drink. V'ukimna b'psula edus, and we still don't have psula edus. U'bein b'vasachas bein b'zecher zeh. It doesn't make a difference if they came at the same time or later. You always follow the roiv. Rab Nechemya. It's even telling you that it works b'zecher zeh. The ibavasachas, if it's only b'vasachas, my halach achar roiv deis ika. It's not. You don't go b'asar roiv deis. The chad nami shoyse. Even if it was one against one, she would still drink. The chiddush here is even if it's b'zecher zeh, you go basar roiv dayos. So therefore, the two Eidim will be believed. Hachi askinon, the Huda also meikara of Amar nitmas ishavya. The first Eid that the Mishnah talks about that came into nitmas was a woman, and the second two Eidim were also women. Also tarti mavatule. The two women that come later will be able to be mavatul the testimony of the first woman. Now the question is, we had two cases in our Mishnah. The one case was when the two Eidim said nitmas, and the Echad said loy nitmas. And in that case, she doesn't drink. And the second case was when two Eidim said loy nitmas, and in one they said nitmas, and there she does drink. Why do we need the same halacha twice? It's the same halacha that's telling us that you go basar roiv dayos by psula edus. So why do we need a case where she does drink and a case where she doesn't? Zok Gemara v'tarti v'psula edus lo mali. Zok Gemara mal detema ki aslin basar roiv dayos l'chumra. Maybe when you say you go basar roiv dayos, that's to force her to drink. That's when you go basar roiv dayos. Aval kula, but to let her get away without drinking, maybe lo yaslina, maybe we wouldn't go basar roiv dayos. Kamash Malan that the Allah you go basar roiv dayos no matter what, whether it's going to lead to her drinking, whether it will lead to her not drinking, regardless, we follow the roiv dayos. Kamash Malan. Baruch Hashem, we were to finish two program today, the fifth parak and the sixth parak. B'lineder hadrin alach mishakine, hadrin alach mishakine, hadrin alach mishakine. Agitavach everybody, Yishkoyach. The Bet Hashem will continue tomorrow at 7 a.m. and at 9 a.m.
Shkoyach, good to